So here we go. Now we're hitting the hour. I probably missed a few seconds on that one, but welcome everybody. This is the SharePoint Patterns and Practices General SharePoint Development Special Interest Group, and this is the bi-weekly sync, November 13th edition. So let's actually quickly, I've done some modification on the slides. First of all, our marketing director has created us a new awesome template which we can use, and then I've also shuffled some of the slides from the past calls. But there's always people who haven't actually been in these calls in the past, so quickly explaining what these are all about. So we do have two different special interest group, special interest group teams inside of the SharePoint PnP overall umbrella. And one is around the general development. This used to be around the PnP core and PnP PowerShell, but we kind of expanded that across all of the other SharePoint development topics as well. So this is around end-to-end solution design, provisioning, and automation and APIs and all of that. So talking about CSOM and managed code quite often. And now the other special interest group, which is happening bi-weekly as well, but on the second, this Thursday, it's General Dev SIG. The second Thursday next week, it's going to be SharePoint Framework Special Interest Group call, where we then talk about the client-side development and JavaScript development. So that's really the way we always divide these Thursday calls. So every single week on Thursday at the same time, we always have these calls. Now, like Matt said, this is the general SharePoint development special interest group call. So we're going to talk about, let's say, general development topics. We have some news which has happened since the last special interest group call on this particular special interest group, because last time actually we had to cancel. That was on the week when we were in Dublin. So everybody in the core team were in Dublin, so we were unable to do that. But a month ago, we did have the special interest group call for SharePoint development, and quite a lot of stuff has happened since. And there's some fresh news from today as well. Then we will have three different demos, which we will go through today. So Irvin will start around preview on the PnP commandlets around upcoming site designs and site scripts. So also demonstrating the site designs and site scripts capabilities, but this is more around how do we configure those and how do we actually make them available within a tenant. Now, let's be super clear on this one. It is a preview capability. Site designs and site scripts are not yet available for preview, but it will be available quite soon. So you will see something which is going to be lighting up quite soon in the SharePoint Online. The second thing what we'll have a talk about is the provisioning of out-of-the-box modern web parts to pages. So Bert has been working on this model quite a lot together with the engineering people. So how do we actually provision modern theme sites with out-of-the-box web parts on the welcome pages as well? So there's certain specific, let's say, challenges around that one, and Bert is going to do a demo on that one and explain what is that all about. And I'm going to do, we probably do have time, so I will absolutely do a quick demo on upcoming sample. So we are refreshing some of the PnP samples to be more aligned on the modern experiences. And this is a sample which we're planned to go live today, but it's slightly, we need to polish some stuff on it still. But this is a self-service provisioning application for modern experiences. So how do you actually have that self-service experience? So you go to a form, you request a new team site, but it's actually provisioning modern communication sites or modern collaboration sites or those team sites. And this is really around the last demo is more around thinking on the fact that there's quite a lot of customers who have invested on the existing self-service site provisioning solutions. So we kind of show how easily you can, in quotes, modify them to actually provision modern sites as well. So absolutely already today, you can move into the modern experiences gradually if that's what you're looking for. Now, let's actually move on things. So opportunities to participate in this community. So in the SharePoint General Development Special Interest Group site, if you're interested, we're more than willing to actually give you a position in these calls. So if you're building something around provisioning or automation or APIs, or you want to demonstrate your solution, we are more than happy to actually give you the spot in this call, and you can demonstrate your solution which is available. Now, it does not have to be something which is in a GitHub. It might be something what your product, what your company is offering as a service, because the key point of these calls is that people can understand what we can build on top of the SharePoint. So you can demonstrate some solution which you can show or whatever if you're interested in doing that. And then obviously contribute in a GitHub and provide us feedback. So contributing on GitHub through issues or pull requests and absolutely give the feedback coming. So we in SharePoint Engineering will know what works and what doesn't work. And we'll come back on that one in a second as well. Now, a few news. I promised that in past special interest group calls, I will keep this slide in here for upcoming months. But just to repeat the story once again, MSDN is going to be shut down gradually, or it's going to be archived. So all of the existing active SharePoint development topics are moving to docs.microsoft.com. So AKMS SPDev docs is probably the easiest URL to remember, or docs.microsoft.com/SharePoint. Either way, you'll find the development documentation, and you can easily access that. And these are sourced from GitHub, which is kind of cool. So if you find a bug, if you find a typo, if you find something which you don't agree, you can always go to the GitHub site and then first of all report an issue, or potentially even submit a suggestion on the modification changes which should be provided within the documentation. And that's really, really cool. So everybody can actually let us know what is the documentation, what's missing, and also the docs.microsoft.com platform has a great commenting capabilities as well. So you can actually ask questions on the individual pages as well. Now, other, let's say, news before we go to the, let's say, demo section. This is something which we haven't been super vocal, but I think we need to fix that. So whenever we went live with the SharePoint framework, we were pretty, let's say, open on the fact that if there's any bugs, if there's any issues, critical issues, which you can find from a SharePoint framework, please log a bug in the SPDev docs issue list. But I don't think that many people are aware of this process. And what we want to do in the future is that we want to make sure that people are aware, because if you find a critical issue, if you find a critical bug, we actually want to know about it immediately. And this is kind of a bypassing process for all of our support channels and everything else. So this is meant to be mainly for, originally for SharePoint framework issues, potential SharePoint framework issues, but obviously if you find anything critical on other SharePoint areas as well, we're more than interested on hearing those through the issue list channel. And this doesn't require anything else from you than submitting an issue on the issue list. Obviously, if it's a random question on how would I do something in the feature framework, this isn't really the right location to ask those questions. Rather, if you find a bug, if you find or you have a suggestion on what kind of documents should we improve in the future, all of those stuff, you can use the issue list in the SPDev docs repository. So AKMS SPDev issues would be the short list or short URL to remember. And if you have any critical things, please please let us know through here as well, because this is actually bypassing our, let's say, complicated support process, because we want to tackle potential critical issues as fast as possible. And we'll be concentrating more and more on the future on the submissions in the issue list as well. But it gives you more visibility on what's happening, and it's better to actually open an issue in this issue list rather than send an email, for example, to me, because I don't have time to read my email anymore, because I'm getting way too many one-to-one contacts in multiple locations. And putting that issue in this issue list means that other people can actually find, oh, there's a acknowledged issue, and potentially somebody from engineering has already acknowledged and let us know what's actually happened. Column formatting, just a update on this one. Last time, a month ago, when we had a special interest group call, we talked about the fact that column formatting is coming soon. Now it's out. You probably might have seen this already, but column formatting is now available for preview tenants and preview usage. And we also have an open source repository for sharing JSON samples. Right now, the whole system works in a way that you need to learn kind of slightly complicated JSON definition to create this column formatting rules. But in the future, we're looking into having a proper UI tool in the SharePoint Online or in the SharePoint for making these easily available using a browser. But that's something which is going to be evolving in the future. And now I just see that there's a small issue in the URL, so let me actually fix that live on the slide, because I could actually do that. The second URL, which you can actually see here, does no longer exist. I'm not sure actually if you can see what I'm actually hiding here. Is this working, by the way? Can somebody say in the iron window that can you see the red thing what I'm actually adding on the slide?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. Excellent. So that URL has actually, yes, good. So also double checking that people can hear that I'm talking. Now, the second URL is actually gone, and that was originally one of our ideas to have a disconnected tool, an offline tool, but we actually got rid of it. So the documentation is in the docs.microsoft.com, and then we do have a GitHub repository for these community contributions, and that seems to be quite actually active, so people are contributing and adding examples over there. Thank you, Patrick. You can't hear me. That's good. Cool. Other news before we go to the actual demo sections. Announcement of Office 365 CLI for managing Office 365 tenant on any platform. And this is something which went live today, earlier today in the dev.office.com/blogs. We had a blog post and a short video recorded by Valdek. And this is a tool to manage your tenant level properties and operations or settings without a PowerShell. So if you are using a Windows platform, this is not necessarily for you. But there's a lot of actually more and more people who are using Mac or Linux, and the classic PowerShell doesn't really work there, or we as in Microsoft or SharePoint engineering, we do not release a PowerShell which would work in the Mac platform or in the Linux. So people have been forced in the past to then create a VM and host a VM and use that to manage their tenant properties. Now, what this one is providing is a CLI using a Node platform. So Node platform which can be used, you're able to sign in against your Office 365 tenant and admin UIs or admin URLs, and then you're able to manage stuff like CDN settings or tenant level properties and some of the other settings as well. And depending on the interest and depending on the demand, you'll absolutely see more and more operations available in this tool as well. Obviously, the PowerShell is no doubt our primary way of managing tenant, and it will be always the latest and greatest. This is community-driven initiative, which is then giving people who are using a Mac or Apple a way to manage, or a Linux, a way to manage their Office 365 tenant settings without the need of having a VM. So kind of cool tool, and it's going to probably help at least some of you who are wondering how to manage these settings if you're using a non-Microsoft platform. Hopefully interested. If you're interested, the documentation is in AKMS 0365 CLI. And there's a blog post available as well in the dev.office.com/blogs, and which has a short video recorded by Valdek on how this actually works. And like commented there by Sebastian, this is no doubt targeted for classic, let's say, primarily, no, well, I wouldn't say primarily, but it is something classic what SharePoint Framework developers are asking, that it would be great if they could actually manage, for example, Office 365 CDN settings without the requirements of opening up a VM which is running on Windows. So this one will do that. And I'm not going to comment on the blank root password comment, but it's been an interesting thing to follow in Twitter or in news. Cool. What else? Probably a final news, if I remember correctly, how I prepped the slides quickly. So SharePoint PowerShell documentation has also now moved to docs.microsoft.com. This happened this week. So we are shutting down the TechNet. I think the TechNet has already redirections in place, and the PnP PowerShell redirections in MSDN will be enabled probably later this week. But what's kind of cool about this one is that if you go AKMS SP PowerShell, you'll land to this one page where you can find all of the PowerShell related on SharePoint. So we have SharePoint on-premises PowerShell, SharePoint online tenant admin PowerShell, and also PnP PowerShell commandlets side by side between everything. And you'll find the latest documentation here. We'll keep on refreshing that as we release newer versions of the PowerShell commandlets. And now that this is in docs.microsoft.com, we can also keep the SharePoint Online PowerShell documentation in much more easily up to date. So we're working on getting all of this fully automatic. Whenever we're releasing a new version, we would actually update all of these documents, which is cool and a super useful resource for everybody. Yes, kind of TechNet goodbye, old friend as well. So now this kind of relates on the discussion that DevDocs have already been moved to the docs.microsoft.com. So it's pretty obvious that TechNet will be, let's say, well, I wouldn't say shut down, but it will be archived as well. And all of the relevant content will be gradually moving to docs.microsoft.com/SharePoint/IT Pro, if I remember correctly, or something like that. So you'll find absolutely the same guidance, but it's in the new location, and it's backed by a GitHub repository. So if there's any issues, if there's anything what you need to change, you can always submit a pull request as well. And that's really, really cool. Ralph is remembering really old stuff. I was in kindergarten in '93. No, I wasn't, but still. Olaf, let's actually move on to the live demos on things. Yeah, 93. Let's see. I was 18. Yeah, I was 18. So Sebastian, you're pretty young. Cool. Let's actually start the first of today's demos, and let's start with then Erwin. So Erwin is going to show some of the preview on the PnP commandlets around the upcoming site designs, the site scripts capabilities, and most likely he's going to do a live demo on the site designs as well. We've been doing these demos a few times already in the special interest group call, and before somebody's asking when this is live, it's going to be live. The plan is still to make site designs and site scripts available by end of this year, which means within a few weeks. So by end of December. But Erwin, feel free to take away the screen and presentation.
Yeah, in '93, I actually just got my first job. To put age in context.
Yes, I know that you win this discussion. Erwin hates that I keep telling that he is so old, and no, you're not. You just look old. You've been working too much in IT.
Exactly, that's probably it. Yeah. Right. So site designs. Most of you probably have seen them already at work in demos that Vesa or I have been doing. We did it in the keynote in Dublin at ESPC. We demoed it in Ignite. Just to briefly explain again what a site design is. It's something that kicks in the moment you create a modern site, a team-centered communication site, which can kick in. So if I create a new site here, and I pick a template or a type of site, then here you see the designs popping up. And this is, for instance, a custom site design that you can select. And when you create the site, it will do all kinds of things as you defined in that site. And during the demos, again in Dublin and Ignite, we showed you, for instance, how it executed a flow that's connected to an Azure storage queue where an Azure function was kicking in, etc., etc., etc. So what I will show you today is how you create a site design and how you associate it with a site script, because there's two different things. There's a site script and a site design. And let's go back to PowerShell and show you. So what you're looking at is not available currently out there. You need a specific tenant that we're using here for the demo. But it will come pretty soon. The commandlets are available as from the next masterverse, the next release we will do. But if you run them on your tenant, it's not available. You will get a message like this is currently not released yet, and you will have to wait. So in order to see all your site designs, you say get PnP site design. press enter, and it connects to your tenant. And you have to understand, you have to be tenant administrator here. So it connects basically to your tenant level. And then it retrieves the site designs. And here you see the 4 site designs currently active. When I just clicked on the create team site, you only saw 3, and that is because you can hook up a site design to a specific site type, being a communication site or a team site. So here you see the site designs, and every site design is associated with 1 or more site scripts. So you see here the grids of the site scripts, and in order to see the site scripts, you enter PnP, get PnP site script, and here we see the site scripts. And we can have a look in the site scripts, but I will just create a new one and show you how to create one and how to associate one with a site design. And then when it's applied, I will create a site based on that new site design. So a site script is nothing more than a blob of JSON, effectively. So if we open code here, you see here a site script. And what I do here is I create a list. Here's the verb, create list. I'm calling that PnP demo list. It's based on generic list, custom list. Then I set a description to this as a demo list. I add a field being repository name of type text, which is not required, and it should be in the default view. I add another field of type number, which is called number of contributors, which is also added to the default view and is a required field. Then I have another action here where I say add a navigation link to this list, and it's web relative, so I don't have to enter the full URL here of the list. And then I apply a theme, being the Contoso Programs theme. That's effectively what I'm doing here. So this is my whole site script. So I just copy this to the clipboard and do some PowerShell magic. Clipboard. So now my script is in that variable, script variable. So now I can create very simply a new site script, add PnP site script, title PnP demo script. Description, you can specify description if you want to. Let's do it. Demo script, content, and that's my script. Press enter, site script has been created. So if I retrieve my site scripts now, there is my demo script. So what I do now is I copy this grid here, and I say add PnP site design, title PnP demo. Site script IDs, there's an array of values. You can just basically paste that grid there. Then the description, you have an if and it's the default site script. You can specify, it's a bit difficult to see maybe, but you can specify the preview image alt text and the URL of the preview image. So I will just leave those blank for now. And then the web template. And there you specify communication site or team site. So basically what I'm telling now is that, okay, this site design should only show when I create a team site. So press enter. And that's all there is to it. Now my site design has been created in my tenant. If I do get PnP site design, there you will see the site design with my site script associated to it. So if I navigate back to the browser and create a new site, there's my PnP demo site design. And we're calling this, we're going to Berlin, say Berlin in January 2020. Just coming up with something and click next. It's creating the site already. It's a modern site, so this will take a few seconds. There we go. Click finish. Navigates me to the site. And there we see the site design kicking in. Takes a bit, and there we go. It created the PnP demo list. It added the list to the nav navigation, and it applied the theme. So if I click finish right now, it will reload the page. There we go. And there's my PnP demo list with the 2 fields that I defined. So if I click new here, you see the 2 fields. And the contributors field is a required field. This was all there is to it. It was actually not that very complex. Now, what you can do, among others, and I didn't demo that here, but you can hook up a flow that flow, as I said, that we demoed that during Ignite again, the flow adds the URL of the site you just created to a storage queue, and then it can, the storage queue again trigger a function, and that function can kick in and do basically anything you want to do given the APIs available. You don't have to use PowerShell. We're using PowerShell right now. There are methods for you available on the tenant object. So the tenant API, CSOM API has the methods available for you to do this. So you can do this fully from code if you want to. There's nothing preventing you from writing your own console application and using those APIs in there. The only thing that the PowerShell commanders do is basically implement that part of CSOM for you to make your life a bit easier. Site designs are currently very, I see the question here about content types, are basically what I just demoed is what you can do with the exception then of the flow triggering. I didn't demo that, but this is basically it at this moment. It might be extended in the future, but currently this is the level you get with site designs. That was it for me. Thank you.
And coming back on Sebastian's has a what content types not supported? Yes, it's a critical capability. That's why we have an extensibility point, and that's why you can use for example, PnP provisioning to make those content types and all of those available. The reality is that when we go live to the preview, we have a super small set of actions supported in the site script or site design. So any, let's say, slightly more sophisticated or complex scenario will require then an external API to be called, and that's where the flow trigger option is available. And that's what we've been demonstrating in the community calls a few times. There's video recordings available on this one, and also in Ignite and ESPC, that we basically flow trigger, we activate a flow. The flow itself is then adding the URL of a site which was just created to a storage queue, and the storage queue is then activating a Azure function which is then executing PnP provisioning as an example. So sounds maybe complicated, but it's relatively simple setup to do, and it's just a matter of doing those logistics, and then it's up to you what you need to do as part of the provisioning.
To comment the remark from Chris here, that's indeed an approach you could take. Yeah, just use the site design to trigger the flow, and
yes,
then
exactly,
and then do the rest in your function. Yeah,
and most likely that's exactly what will happen. We get that absolutely from an engineering perspective, because those who are familiar with the PnP templating engine, there's really no point of mix and match. You have a flow trigger which will activate the PnP template, and that's it. Absolutely viable option. Does Microsoft have any data on how many sites tenants actually use custom content types? We do, but it's not public information, so I can't disclose that. We do trace significant amount of data, how people are using our tools. Smells right to me. Yes, it does. Yes, numerous people were commenting on that one. Will it have less issues with the site not yet being fully created? Now, on Kevin's comment is related on the fact that the site script or site design is getting activated when you first time actually go to the site. That's what happens there. When first time a person goes to the site, it actually starts the site design, and that's when you use the out-of-the-box UIs. That's just what actually happens there. Technically, the site is not theoretically fully provisioned at that point. So that could actually still cause some headache, and we know that this is a potential challenge for the remote provisioning solution. So it's a classic challenge in the modern experiences, because in engineering side, there has been decisions to reduce or minimize the time taken for provisioning a new site, and one of the approaches is that it's actually the provisioning is happening in async way. So you'll get the site ready, but then some features and activities are asynchronously getting activated slightly later. And for time being, there's no explicit yes or true boolean which would actually tell you when the site is completely 100% provisioned. So that is a classic challenge, and we're looking into potentially getting that solved in the future. Does it matter if the first user does not have the correct permission? No, it doesn't matter. So the execution is not happening with the user permissions, it is happening with the system permissions, so that's all good. Yeah, yes, I absolutely understand the challenge what Kevin is having. So how would I put this in a polite way? Obviously, in SharePoint engineering, there's experienced people, there's non-experienced people, there's new people, there's old people, and all of that, and the people who come from different sides, and then there's always a long debate on the right approach and the priorities on these things. So we'll most likely get the fully provisioned flag there at some point. At the same time, it does make sense, I do agree on that one, that having a site super fast ready for the end users is quite nice feature as well. So it is debatable, should we delay on getting the site available and do more on sync rather than async. So it's an endless debate, let's put it this way. But I think let's flip to Bert's demo, and then we'll do my demo as well, and we can continue discussion on the other topics if there's any Q&A after that. Bert, take it away. Bert, we can't hear you if you're talking. We can see your screen, so that's already a good start. But we can do a telepathic connection between you and me, and I can hopefully tell what you're talking. No, it doesn't work. I can't hear a thing. You're too far. You unmuted and muted, and still nothing. And SharePoint telepathy, common feature. Yes, indeed. I think it might be in worst case scenario, Bert, you need to reconnect. Oh, Mike.
Yeah, better now. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, now good. Now it's good.
Right. And the screen still visible?
Yep, the screen is visible. All good.
All right. Good. Okay. Topic of my demo is around provisioning modern first-party web parts to client pages. So for the folks that have joined in these SIG calls, you've seen several demos in the past where we created modern client-side pages and put web parts on the pages. We typically use the image web part and the Hello World custom web part or some fancy other custom third-party web part. But we received several notifications from community that certain first-party web parts were not working. For example, quick links. So when you used quick links and you applied it to a page, it simply didn't work, which was quite annoying because we want all those first-party web parts to be available for you to pragmatically put on pages. And that's the reason why we did some investigation. We found some issues. We fixed issues. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But I'm going to first show a recommended approach on configuring those first-party web parts and using them in the PnP provisioning flow. So I have like a modern site open here, and I'm going to go first to the workbench. All right, loading workbench. I'm not running anything locally, so it complains about Gulf server, but you can ignore that. The reason why I want to use Workbench is because it's an easy way for me to configure web parts and to copy the necessary JSON properties afterwards. So let's add the web part. Let's take our quick links friend, the one that didn't work. If I see it, here it is. All right. Let's put some links in it. Let's put a link to the set presentation. Let's change this to PnP rocks. Let's add another one. Loading. Well, let's take something. Go on, load. Why don't you load?
Clearly using it wrong. So
yeah, it must be. The thing is, if I copy it from here, it might not. Let's go to images. Yeah, let's try this. See if this works. Yep, seems to work. Let's change this to New Zealand. All right, web part configured. Next step, click on web part data in the workbench, which will give you like a massive JSON blob, because this is a pretty complex web part. This has a ton of settings, and that's why having a visual designer for it using Workbench is pretty neat. So you copy the JSON structure, don't take the square brackets, leave them out. Well, let's start from the bottom. That's easier, like this. Copy. All right. Now I want to reuse this JSON configuration to provision a modern page with the same web part. Before I can paste the JSON, I need to encode it, because otherwise it doesn't really fit nicely into PnP provisioning XML. So let's encode. And then let's copy the encoded text, which is really long now, but it should work. So I'm going to copy this one. And I'm going to flip over to a template I already pre-created. So this is a template having one page and one section of one column, so which is empty. So I'm going to add a control in here. Canvas control, web part type. This was quick links. This needs to match with the thing that you did. So quick links, and then I'm gonna take the JSON control data. I'm gonna just paste the whole encoded JSON blob, and then let's close the control. All right, one control done. Let's do one more. Where is my window? Here. Okay. Back to the workbench. Close. Any preferences for web art? That's, well, that's risky in a demo, so I'm just going to take one that I want. All right. Delete. Let's take big maps. Enter a location. Stockholm is a nice city, I think. Never been there, but I guess it's nice. Erwin can confirm. Let's zoom in to something in Stockholm, like this. Stockholm, give the web part a title. Stockholm is really nice.
But
all right, maybe we
never been there. What?
No, that's true. I've never been there.
I've been
well,
there
not really. I've been at the airport. I visited,
there we go.
but not really in the city.
Yes, fake news. Sorry, good comment from Patrick.
Okay, again, copying the web part data. You see this one is slightly smaller, easier. Copy, just repeat the same trick. So now let's clear this guy, paste this in, encode, and copy the result. Copy, boom. And let's simply add one other control on the page. Type big maps, JSON control data, like this, closing and done. All right. So we've configured two web parts, quick links, big map, which are pretty complex. I'm not sure if big map didn't work before, but I definitely know that quick links didn't work before this change. So let's see if it works now. Since this depends on code which has been checked into the dev branch recently, meaning today, this morning, it's not yet available in the NuGet packages. Will be available in the upcoming December release. But for now, you have to use the developer branch. So, and I'm going to just test this with a basic unit test that will apply the template. So let's debug this test. It starts running. So we'll load this particular file. Wait, what's that? Oh, I guess I did some comments in here. Let's clean up this file. There's some leftovers. Most likely. Like this. And someone is making a lot of noise. All right, try again. Stop this one. Go back over here. And debug my test. Here we go. Hopefully it works now. Loading up the template, and the template has been loaded. So we have one template having one client-side page with one section, and in this section we have two controls. It's fairly small for you guys to read, but I can't zoom this because it then disappears. But essentially, two controls on the page like we defined in XML. I'm going to press F5. And the provisioning will continue. It will only do the page content handler specified over here. So it should be fairly quick. And once that's done, almost. Yep, we're done. Let's flip back to the SharePoint side. Let's go to our pages library. Let's see if we have a new page, which should be the case. So we have SIG demo 3011, and let's load this one, and boom, here we go. Quick links web part, as it works. Stockholm is working, looking nice. All good. So why does it work now? Why didn't it work before? Let's have a quick look at that. And let's go over to Solution Explorer. The reason why it didn't work before is because, and this is pretty technical, but I just want to show you guys anyhow. So we provisioned the web part with all the required components, HTML essentially. So we kind of create the HTML and then stuff the HTML into the canvas content one field. But we didn't add the HTML underneath this particular HTML properties div. And the reason why, because initially some web parts that we tested did work without this HTML, but this is critical for some web parts like quick links, like Bing Maps to get to work. And that's a change we did. Now you might wonder like, oh, wait, now we have like a custom HTML per web part. It's all different per web part. And how do we deal with that? And is it not a maintenance nightmare, etc.? And fair questions. But luckily, that's not the issue. There's not really a problem around that because if you look at, for example, the quick links web part properties, the JSON that we actually, remember the structure we copied from the workbench. If you format it nicely, you get this data over here, which, by the way, is available if you go to pages. I've added all web parts with their properties. So if you ever want to configure or copy, have a look at the properties. This is an easy place for you to have a look at it, how it is configured by default. Now, there is the server processed content node in the JSON structure. And that's critical for those web parts. So for first-party web parts, if you put them on a page, try to just copy over this part as well, because that's the one that's driving this HTML output. If you don't have this in the JSON that you specify, then the web part will still not work. So that's the reason why we really want to advise you use the workbench, put the web part in the workbench, copy the JSON structure, and paste it in. You can still change the JSON to fit it to your needs, because you can tailor it and play around with it. But having this part in it is important. So if you make a generic solution, you have to ensure that you also update these things in this on these places, because that's being transformed to HTML at, when the page is rendered. I think that sums up this short demo, Vesa.
Cool.
I hope this now unblocks all the first-party web parts to be used for everyone. If there's still problems around them, please reach out, because we really want to make those web parts work perfectly.
Yeah, and there was two questions what I want to follow up on that we actually mentioned. So Leo was asking that, hey, so was there any server-side changes? And the answer is actually no. The changes are only on client side, so we didn't do any server-side changes for this. The PnP is always using native out-of-the-box CSOM APIs or REST APIs or out-of-the-box APIs. So CSOM is just a wrapper on everything what is natively there. To be fair, if we have a look on from a slightly longer picture, so within the past 3 to 4 years, we've been actually through the PnP and the initiatives which we had on side of the PnP and before the PnP, we've been able to actually include a lot of additional APIs on the surface. And then in the future, more and more also in the Microsoft Graph side. But that's another discussion. Now, the second thing is, where can I find an example for PnP provisioning template for modern pages? Probably the easiest way to do that is an export a live site, or export a live page or a site from a click-through to a browser and then do an export.
Yeah, you have to configure the homepage. So we only export the homepage, but you can just configure the homepage, put the web parts on it, export it, and you will get the necessary XML that you can reuse.
Yep. Cool. And then for some reason, if we look back on the front page, I'm going to move back on the, because I have one slide which I wanted to quickly go through before jumping on the actual demo. And my animations apparently are slightly broken, but that's fine. So we do not have a massive amount of time, but this is an upcoming sample which will be hopefully in the December release, or it should be in the December release. But what we're planning to do with this sample is we do have quite a lot of, let's say, provisioning examples and solutions in the PnP in the GitHub. But this is the first one which is doing end-to-end self-service site provisioning using the modern site. So you're able to use this as a baseline or an example how to do modern team sites or communication sites using the self-service site provisioning technique. So this is solution for those scenarios where you have already invested, for example, significantly to existing customization. You don't want to use out-of-the-box UIs. In the SharePoint welcome page, you have your own provisioning logic. It might be due to the fact that you're asking additional metadata. It might be due to the fact that you have a completely separate, let's say, external system, which is provisioning your solutions. And in the provisioning, we always recommend this, even though provisioning a new site collection or a modern site collection, it only takes a few seconds nowadays, but we always recommend this to be an asynchronous process if possible. Theoretically, you can actually make this happen in a synchronous way, but it's not really the optimal situation, because if you start modifying the site after the site collection has been provisioned, you start applying themes and branding and lists and libraries. Suddenly, actually, the execution might take longer than 1 minute. And for example, the 1 minute is a timeout for a classic website in an Azure hosting. So if the execution will take longer than 1 minute, your execution will be shut down. And that's why there might be issues with that approach. So that's why we say that you should be always looking into having this asynchronous solution. An asynchronous solution, it always means that it's actually surprisingly simple to do. We're looking into getting this re-recorded as a video and the steps getting properly written down. But basically you have a UI or a solution where you drop the needed message to an Azure storage queue. And this is super easy, super simple, super cheap, so it's not really a cost factor either. But you have a message structure which you dropped on the Azure storage queue, and then you either use an Azure function or an Azure web job as the primary tool to actually do the provisioning and applying of the template. And now the stuff what Bert showed today can be then used, for example, inside of the template automatically, so you can provision stuff from a web job or an Azure function properly on the welcome pages and all of that cool stuff. One thing what we also demonstrate with this sample, which I will show in a second as well, is a way that you do not always need to use an app-only access in the Azure function or in the web job. So in this particular solution, we're actually taking the access token of a user and we include that to the storage queue message. And by default, the access token in Microsoft Azure, I think the timeline right now by default is 1 hour. It could be adjusted by a administrative or as an Azure AD admin to a minimum of 10 minutes. Which means though that within 1 hour, the message has to be processed, or otherwise the access token is no longer valid. But what's cool about this approach is that since we take the access token, push it in the storage queue will then fire as a function or a web job. We actually use a user context when we're calling back to SharePoint Online. So you can actually do all of the needed operations which require a user operation or user context, because we are actually using the user access token, which is super cool. Because in the SharePoint Online, like in the SharePoint in general, there are certain limitations like user profile properties or certain other limitations or capabilities which are not available if you're using the app only. And sure, we should get those fixed, and I do get that, but this is a nice workaround for getting stuff executed on this side. Cool. So let's actually quickly have a look on this. Look on this one in practice. This will be a relatively short and not a super complicated demo. This is work in progress. Since we found a few issues earlier today on this one, so we need to actually get that one, those one fixed. But before we go there, before I actually move on the demo, let me share my screen so we're able to actually see the demo in practice. What's the best place to go to ask how the question? That's well, the SP Dev Docs is, I think it's theoretically valid, or then the issue lists in the GitHub in the particular repo. That's probably the one way of thinking that. Now let me share my screen and let's double check when people are getting the screen. I do have a slide waiting there as a small joke, but somebody needs to confirm when the screen sharing is available. When can you see Bert?
I see it.
Cool. Okay. So let me actually break that presentation and let's go to the resource topic. So let me show this one quickly in practice. So, and like I said, this is still work in progress. We need to modify certain things. There are certain last minute findings earlier from today. But what we have is that we'll have a solution structure. Let me actually do this in a way. This is kind of a classic SharePoint PnP provisioning structure, where we have an ASP.NET solution, which is an MVC solution, obviously, because, well, it definitely should not be web forms anymore. And then we have an Azure Function implementation. We'll most likely actually change the Azure Function implementation to be based on PowerShell. We haven't actually yet decided this, but we're kind of running out of time pretty soon because we want to get this one into December release. And then the infrastructure is just shared code right now between the function and the web job, and then we have a web job. And based on the selection what the person now does within this sample solution, I will put the processing request either to the function or in a web job. In the real world, you would actually choose. You'd either implement your stuff using Azure Function or based on Azure Web Job. There's certain advantages and disadvantages in both. Technically, the Azure Function is never meant to be used in a long running operation, and with the long running operation meaning more than 5 minutes execution of things. So if your provisioning engine is doing a lot of stuff, connecting to on-premises or connecting to external systems, trying to figure out something, then does something, then does something, then applies a template to the site, then definitely you should be looking into using a web job rather than an Azure Function, because web jobs are then more designed on a long running operations. But again, this is debatable, which option do you want to use. And there's a cost factor behind of all of this as well. Azure Functions are cheaper than Azure Web Jobs, potentially. But again, slightly depends. Now, in our case, let me actually start that one. I'm just going to open up this one in here. Let me see if I actually get the local host up and running in the context of my tenant. So I'm kind of mimicking the situation where I'm using my local tenant and signing in using my account. And there it is, there's the application. So there's essentially will provide you a simple generic sample, which is your self-service site provisioning UI. This could be hosted in Azure. It's an Azure application registered in Azure site. So it's not necessarily in the context of Office 365 as a provider hosted add-in, but obviously you can link that through within your tenant. And then I can select, for example, that I want to provision a communication site. Let's call this SIG demo. 13th North and SIG call demo 13th North, and site description doesn't really matter. Site classification is something which we right now have here. Most likely we'll actually drop this away from the final demo. Even though this is kind of cool, it goes to the Azure AD and checks what's the official site classifications, which would be shown in the out-of-the-box UIs as well. But I think this adds unnecessary complexity on the reference solution. And then we can show and select, we're going to use Azure Function or Web Job. So in the real-world implementation, you wouldn't clearly have this kind of a selection. You would design your solution and do either way, but this is for a reference sample, or let's say a simple technology sample, so you can actually have a look on the advantages and disadvantages of both options. And then you're able to select, am I going to use a PnP template 01 or 02? So technically we're going to create a communication site, so a modern modern communication site, and then we're going to apply a PnP template on top of it in our Azure Web Jobs when I click Create. And now let's actually make sure that this works, or let's see if it actually works. So it's based on Azure storage queues. So let me refresh my storage queue, and most likely we can actually see there's my message. So it is in the storage queue waiting to get processed. We can see that it's saying SIG call demo 30 and demo, that was the alias what I provided to it. Because we have the Azure Web Jobs waiting in our Azure application, Azure site, configured to follow up this message queue. That would mean that if everything is getting executed properly, the message is now processed from the queue. And why is that? Well, our Azure Web Job got executed automatically. So if I jump now to the Azure side, see if I can actually find, there's my Azure side, there's my Azure Web Job, and in Azure side I have an Azure Web Job running. And we can see that right now there's an execution of process queue message, which is executing 49 seconds ago. If I refresh, we can actually see that it's successfully processed. And if we go here, we can actually see what was the message. And like I said, the cool thing about this one is that one of the things what we provide from this message is the user access token. So we use that dynamically, that user access token of the user which actually originally requested the site, because the execution of the web job will happen in less than that 1 hour, hopefully, unless there's a catastrophic network failures somehow magically between Office 365 and Azure. And by the way, Chris, you're not getting control on this. I think that's an accident. No, you're not getting control. So in this way, we're then getting the user access token. We're using the access token, so we're executing the web job connectivity against Office 365 in the context of the user, and that's pretty cool. And that then means that if I now take this URL, and if I go back on my tenant context, and if I use that URL and request that one, SIG call demo 30 nov, we can see that we just created a new site, and in the site we also created a custom list. So if I go to the site contents, you can see it in the navigation already. We actually have a custom list 01 executed as part of the provisioning as well. And how this one was obviously done is that we have inside of the provisioning engine, in the web jobs area, when we deployed the web job, we have these templates available, which are essentially then decorating, we kind of provision the out-of-the-box communication site, and then we can include, for example, whatever Bert showed earlier today in the demo on that one. So we could modify potentially the welcome page. We can add lists, content types, fields, whatever, as part of the site provisioning as well. Technically, obviously, the provisioning engine can be migrated to the out-of-the-box SharePoint provisioning flow as well. But like I said, if you have already invested on an external tooling and a self-service site provisioning tooling, this is really to show that you can use the modern and provision modern sites as well in the future. Good. I think that's it for that one, and I'm looking into the time. I'm not going to deep dive on the code of this one. Technically, we just take the user access token and the information what user is providing and put that to the message queue, and then we process that during the provisioning, as part of the execution. Relatively simple, classic provisioning solution. The sample will be available. It will be documented how to set up everything, so you can actually follow up on that one. We'll absolutely do the video recording on that, proper video recording on the demo as well. So you can easily follow up on how to do exactly what I did today. But I think that's it for this one. If there's any urgent, let's say, questions, any urgent things which I wasn't able to follow during my demo, just you can add them in the IAM window at this point. Just to follow out of the web part demo, can we use the get PnP web part commandlet to extract web part and properties? Answer is actually no, if I'm not mistaken. Erwin, can you confirm that? That's actually giving you the object. That doesn't actually give you the JSON definition. So
correct. Yeah.
So you would always, yeah. Sorry, Bert.
Yeah, there is currently no commandlet that kind of grabs the web part from an existing page and outputs it for you.
Yeah.
Maybe that would be something nice to have, actually, like
that is a
web part which gives you the JSON structure, so you can then apply it automatically on other. Yeah, I think definitely a good thought, John.
Fair point. On the other hand, it's so super easy to be on the context of SharePoint and then do clicking in the workbench as well and then extract. But again, why not? It's a good idea. But if there's no other, let's say, critical urgent questions, hopefully the content was again interesting, and we're trying to keep this interesting for you and valuable. The samples will be out. Like I said, site designs will be in preview within a few weeks, I would say. That's safe to say. Somebody was asking around the site collection app catalog that's coming out within a matter of days. We've been promising that for quite a long time, within the matter of days, but it is coming in the matter of days, so pretty soon. The sample which you showed, which is saw today, the commandlets, what Erwin did, are coming released on the December release of PnP, and they will be then working within your tenant when the site design is available. Bird stuff will be as part of the December release. The sample what I showed will be polished and will have guidance also as part of the December release and a summary of the PnP release of December. But thank you everybody for joining. Thank you for watching these. Please keep the feedback coming for SharePoint engineering and also for the community stuff. So if something is missing, something isn't working, please let us know. We want to actually help you to be successful with SharePoint customizations. But thank you everybody, and let's absolutely stay in touch. Thank you. Bye-bye.